Hello, folks. I hope you're doing well and having a great day. So, what we're going to do today is take a look at the macromolecules. So, we are made of the physical stuff of the universe, right? And those materials will rearrange in these big molecules. And once constructed appropriately, these big molecules create cells, and all of a sudden things are alive. So, it's a way in which non living materials combine to make something that is alive. The physical stuff of the universe is what makes us up, right? There are certain types of atoms, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, namely, but then we also add in nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, things of other nature. And when they're combined in just the right ways, then you'll produce these molecules that, of course, can do new things. When people say you are what you eat, that's literally the case. So you take material, physical matter from outside your body, and you put it into your body. And to do that and have it become part of you, we have a couple types of reactions that are undertaken. They're called anabolic catabolic reactions. When you digest your food, you chew it up with your teeth, that's like mechanical digestion, or you churn it in your stomach, that's mechanical digestion. And then we also use enzymes to degrade or break these bonds as well, that's a chemical digestion. So catabolic reactions are reactions in which you are basically digesting things, you break bonds. So if we look at the image in the lower right-hand corner, there you see a string of amino acids linked together to form a polymer called a protein. So we think of proteins being in a chicken nugget. So if you eat that chicken nugget, you break the bonds between the amino acids through catabolic reactions. And then the amino acids, they're like little Skittles here, they will travel to the cells in your body, and then under the direction of your DNA, they'll get rearranged into new molecules like, say, some muscle. So you'll eat chicken, break it down into its amino acids, send the amino acids to your cells, and then rearrange it into your muscle or your hair or your skin or your nails or enzymes in your cells or something like that. The reactions where you build up new things, those are called anabolic reactions. So anabolic reactions are forming bonds and they're making things more complex. So it's a sort of combination of reactions where through catabolic reactions, with catabolic I think catastrophic, through catabolic reactions you break things down into their constituent pieces. And then you send those pieces to cells, and using anabolic reactions you build them up in new ways to create new molecules. Now, an important thing to keep in mind with this is that when you make these new molecules, they can perform new functions. Structure influences function. So you take stuff from outside your body, consume it, digest it through catabolic reactions, send those materials to your cells, and then, again, using instructions from DNA, you rearrange those atoms into new molecules that perform new functions. So in that vein, you can take that chicken nugget and digest it into its amino acids, and then you can rearrange those amino acids and build them up into antibodies, like what you see here. Antibodies are these Y-shaped proteins, like a blue Y-shaped protein. The image that you see on the left, the circular image, that's the COVID virus, and it's got those familiar red spike proteins there. So what antibodies can do is recognize the spikes on the COVID virus and attach to it and capture it and neutralize it so it can be destroyed and keep you from getting sick. So this is one instance where I can imagine a person trying to make a claim that a chicken nugget would be good for them, because you can break down the chicken nugget into its amino acids and rearrange those amino acids into antibodies that help your immune system function. So you build stuff up in new ways, and it can sure as heck do new things. All right. Now, there are 4 categories of big molecules that help create cells that are alive. Keeping in mind this idea of emergent properties, you put things together and they can do new things. There are 4 categories of big molecules that, when put together, they create cells that are alive. Now, for most of these molecules, they are arranged as monomers that link together into polymers. Mono is one, poly is many. So a monomer is one small molecule, and then you can link them together in different ways to create these polymers of all these different shapes that do different jobs. So you can imagine like Legos, right? You can take a Lego ship, break it down into its pieces, and then use some of those pieces and rearrange them into like a Lego castle. So oftentimes we consume polymers. We digest them through catabolic reactions. Those materials are absorbed through our bloodstream and sent to our cells. And then within our cells, those monomers are rearranged into new polymers that have new properties and do the work of life. So what I'd like to do is look at the four categories of molecules that we interact with. The first is carbs. Now when you think of carbs, probably the leading function of carbs is as a source of energy. In terms of what they're made of, three atoms: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. There's a fair amount of oxygen in carbohydrates, which is helpful. Like if you look at this glucose molecule here, there's quite a bit of oxygen in there. What that does is it makes glucose soluble or can dissolve in water, and that helps transfer it through the body and through cells. So the monomers, like glucose, the small molecules, think of those as a source of like quick energy. You got about a 20-minute supply of sugar in your bloodstream. So monomers like glucose can like feed into your cells, and you can use that for the production of ATP. So it's a good source of energy. But sometimes we don't need as much energy as we consume, so we store it for later. And in our bodies, we'll store it as glycogen. So if you look at the images on the right-hand side, glucose is the monomer. That will be what you either eat or digest and consume. And then if you don't need that energy, one way you can store it is as glycogen. That's that branched chain molecule that you see in the bottom right. That's a bunch of glucose monomers linked together, and then you can store that in your liver or in like little sugar packets in the skeletal muscles around your body. But when you think carbs, think energy. Now, I sort of like this image because it pulls us into looking at the relationships with our food. Oops, that didn't seem very happy. All right, we'll call that good. So this looks like a strainer filled with pasta. So you can imagine plants perform photosynthesis. So they use energy from the sun to take carbon dioxide out of the air, and they make glucose. And after the plants make glucose, they want to store it for later, so they link the glucose together into a polymer that they use that's called starch. So starch is a big plant polymer where they basically store a bunch of energy. Well, we dig up the plants or we cut down the plants, and then we eat the starch. So using amylase enzymes in our saliva and our small intestines, we digest the starch, catabolic reactions, right? We digest that starch through catabolic reactions into glucose monomers. They're really small, so we can absorb them in our small intestines, into our bloodstream, and then glucose can travel through our bloodstream to the cells of our body. And this image sort of illustrates that. So you start off with your bowl of pasta. It's made of a bunch of starch. That gets digested down into these disaccharides, which can be further digested and then absorbed in the small intestine. The little pink finger-like projections there, those are villi in your small intestines. It sort of helps increase surface area for when you're absorbing nutrients. So you absorb those monomers, like glucose, through your intestines into your bloodstream, and then it'll eventually get dropped off to your cells. And then in your cells, either you can store it or use it, again, as an energy source. So that's carbs. The second category of molecule that we have are lipids. Now, the thing that's sort of interesting about that, what are lipids made of? Actually, the same thing as carbs: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, a difference, though, is that lipids have very little oxygen, so they're structured differently. So because lipids are structured differently, they're going to do different jobs. And I like to summarize the functions of lipids as MEM. That's membranes, energy, and then messengers. So we'll look at the structure and function of these different types of lipids. First category we're going to look at is energy molecules. So lipids can form triglycerides. The tri is for the 3 fatty acid tails that you see in this molecule. So it's a triglyceride, and you'll notice, again, it's made mostly of carbon and hydrogen and just a little smattering of oxygen there. The thing to recognize in this molecule is that, holy smokes, there are a lot of chemical bonds, right? There are all these carbon and hydrogen connections. Each of these lines represents a chemical bond. And chemical bonds are stored energy. So with triglycerides, you see all those bonds, oh my goodness, that's a great way to pack in a lot of energy. So with triglycerides, you store more energy in less material because there are all these bonds. And that's helpful because we move around. If you're going to eat things and use some of what you eat to store energy, you want to make it weigh as little as possible. So triglycerides store a lot more energy than like starches do. Plants store energy as starch because they're just like in the ground or on the ground. They're not going anywhere. We store energy as lipids, triglycerides namely, because we are on the move. We have to take our energy stores with us everywhere we go. So we pack as much energy as possible in these carbon-hydrogen bonds, and that lets us store energy long-term as we move our bodies around. The next category of lipids that we'll look at are phospholipids. Now, the image in the upper right here, this is one phospholipid. You'll notice its structure. It's got a circular head with a bunch of oxygen in it, and then these two tails. Those zigzag lines mean they're just made of carbon and hydrogen. So the molecule, the way it's structured, is it's got a head with a bunch of oxygen, which makes it polar, and tails, which are just carbon and hydrogen, which make it nonpolar. Now, life exists in water. So phospholipids, because of the way they're built with a polar end and a nonpolar end, they'll actually arrange themselves in a bilayer like this. They're in two layers so that the polar heads are on the outside in contact with water. And then nonpolar tails, which are like hiding in the inside, trying to avoid water. So it's sort of wild to think about, but life exists at the cellular level, and the only thing holding cells together are these phospholipids, like scrunched together with their tails trying to avoid water. Now, a really neat feature of phospholipids, you notice how one of these tails is bent? Those bent tails prevent phospholipids from packing in too tightly. So what that means is they remain fluid at room temperature. So we always see lots of images of cell membranes, but when you look at this image of a cell membrane, imagine all of these phospholipids actually swirling around one another. So the phospholipids that make up your membrane are constantly swirling around one another in this sort of waltz. And that's actually really important because it makes membranes flexible. We have cells, but we can bend them. Additionally, by having these phospholipids sort of swirling around one another, you can squeeze some things through the membranes to get some stuff in and out of cells. So phospholipids are crazy important in terms of the construction and operation of cell membranes. Remember, we need a membrane to make sort of an internal world that's separate, semi-separate from the external world, and phospholipids do a lot of that work. Okay, we've looked at energy, we've looked at membranes. The last thing here, chemical messengers. So steroids are a type of hormone that are made from lipids. So they're nonpolar, which means they can squeeze between those phospholipids and cell membranes, and they can actually get inside of cells. This is important because these types of, or this class of chemical messengers can actually switch genes on or off inside of cells. So if we look at the image in the upper right here, the secretory cell, that would be like cells in a gland. So a gland will produce these hormones, which are the little red molecules, and then the hormones travel through the bloodstream, into cells, all the way into the control room, all the way into the nucleus. And then what can happen is those hormones can actually switch on genes. So an example of this would be like puberty. During puberty, hormones like the estrogens and testosterone, they get produced, and then these hormones, because they're lipids, they're nonpolar, they can get inside of the nuclei of cells, switch on genes, and then cause cells to produce these new proteins. And when the new proteins are produced, then people develop secondary sex characteristics we associate with females and males. So these chemical messengers get inside of cells, change the expression of genes, and get new proteins made. And of course, you make new proteins, are going to do new jobs, and the body changes. All right, so that's lipids. The third category of molecule are nucleic acids. So proteins are sort of the machines that do a lot of the work inside of cells. But the question becomes, how do you make proteins? Either, what instructions do you need and what machinery is going to do the assembly? And nucleic acids are the answer to that. If we look at what they're made of, nucleic acids have very similar materials to the other molecules we've looked at. They've got carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They mix it up a little bit here because they also incorporate nitrogen and phosphorus. Now, nucleic acids are a proper macromolecule. They have monomers, smaller molecules that you link together to form a polymer. So the monomer that we see here is called a nucleotide. It's got a sugar, a phosphate, and then a nitrogenous base. Now, this structure is helpful because if we look at the image on the right here, the sugars and phosphates, they link together to form a chain. So the sugar and phosphates form like the backbone of the molecule that stabilize the molecule. And then the nitrogenous bases are important, the adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine, the ATCG. Those are important because the order of those nitrogenous bases provides the code. So just like we have the letters of our alphabet that we can arrange in different ways to have different words with different meanings, you can take those 4 nitrogenous bases and by combining them in different orders, it's instructions for making different proteins. So let's see. Nucleic acids themselves, like DNA, they are the instructions for making the proteins. So if we look at this image, the DNA molecule is sort of in blue here. And it says, okay, these are what amino acids need to be combined in what order. And then, of course, somebody needs to do the actual work. DNA gets all the glory. RNAs actually do the assembly. If we look at this image here, let's see, the sort of aqua or green structures that we see, those are tRNAs or transfer RNAs. They grab amino acids, which are sort of purple here. They grab those amino acids and bring them to this brown structure, and the brown structure is a ribosome. Ribosomes are made of ribosomal RNA. And when this happens, sort of the code that's brought by messenger RNA gets decoded. So if we think of the sort of flow of information, the code from DNA is converted into this temporary coded messenger RNA. And then tRNAs bring amino acids in the correct sequence. And then the ribosomal RNA, the ribosome, links the amino acids together, and boom, you get a protein. So if you don't mind, I'd like to actually bop back a few slides here. So here's, I think, a helpful image. If we look, this looks like a basket of eggs. So imagine a person eats some eggs, and in the eggs are proteins like albumin. So through catabolic reactions, you digest those proteins from the egg into amino acids. Then the amino acids are absorbed through your small intestine into your bloodstream and sent to your cells. So you've basically eaten protein and digested it into amino acids and then absorbed those amino acids into your cells. Now what the heck do you do with those amino acids? Well, here, rather than looking like the Skittles, they're purple. So these are amino acids from the eggs. And then the amino acids get linked together through anabolic reactions to form all the different proteins of the cell that runs your cells. Okay, so again, DNA is instructions. RNAs do the work. tRNAs bring the amino acids to the ribosomes. Ribosomal RNA does the linking. And then messenger RNA takes the code from the nucleus to the ribosome. So it's a team of RNAs that sort of make it happen. So again, DNA gets lots of accolades. RNA actually, does the nitty-gritty and gets things done. Okay, the last category of big molecules we're going to look at, proteins. So think of proteins as the machinery that runs cells. Okay, we begin. What are the atoms? What are proteins made of? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, just like anything else. But this time, we're going to add nitrogen and sulfur. Sulfur, it's sort of an aside, but sulfur atoms can form disulfide bridges, which help stabilize proteins, which is helpful because they're really big. Proteins are really big molecules. All right, the building blocks of proteins, the monomers, are amino acids. So you can link together amino acids to form these big polymers, which are proteins. Now, Again, I think it's helpful to think of this in terms of Legos. You can take the same Lego blocks, and amino acids are like Lego blocks. So you can take the same amino acids, the same Lego blocks, and you can arrange them in different ways to create different structures that will perform different functions. So you'll eat proteins all day long in your meals. You'll digest them into amino acids and send them to your cells. And then using instructions from DNA, you'll build new proteins with different shapes to do the work of life. So let's explore some of the different types of proteins and what they do. Let's see here. The first category of proteins we're going to look at are enzymes. Enzymes are proteins that can catalyze reactions. That means they make reactions happen faster than they naturally would. So in blue here, we can imagine this is an enzyme. And then in red, this is the substrate. This is the molecule that the enzyme acts upon. So you could imagine like a disaccharide like maltose, and then it gets broken down into its constituent monomers through enzymes. What enzymes do is lower activation energy. It means it takes less energy to make it happen, and so that speeds up the time. Reactions happen more quickly. In terms of how fast enzymes are working, certain enzymes under optimal conditions can catalyze about 500,000 reactions in 1 second. So if in 1 second an enzyme can perform 500,000 reactions, it sort of gives you some sense of scale of what these things are doing. You're made of about 10 trillion cells, and inside of your trillions of cells are millions of molecules, and they need to be converted from stuff that's outside the body to something that the body can use. So you have millions of trillions of chemical reactions going on inside your cells every minute of every day of your life. And so enzymes are super important for making things happen fast enough to carry out these reactions. Another category of protein is antibodies. Antibodies are these little Y-shaped proteins that we looked at earlier. I think of them as being like your buddies. Sometimes stuff gets inside your body that just shouldn't be there, and they can cause disease. That's what we call pathogens. And antibodies, if we look at the image on the right here, the Y-shaped arms have these antigen recognition sites. They basically have very particular shapes. And so if you have antibodies that have a shape that matches surface molecules on the pathogens and stuff that shouldn't be there, you can actually glom onto the pathogens and neutralize them and destroy them without getting sick or without getting less sick than you would have been otherwise. So you can imagine here in green, they always show pathogens in green. I think green gets a bad rap in this instance. But here's the pathogen in green, and then you have these blue antibodies that can go and glom onto it, and that prevents the pathogen from getting inside your cells and making you sick. And then like a phagocyte will just come and eat that and digest it with enzymes. Okay, this is a fun example of what proteins can do in your cells. Things aren't just like floating around inside your cells. Materials are actually transported on little protein roads. So there are a couple of types of proteins that are critical here. The striped structure that you see, those are microtubules. Those are like little protein roads inside of cells. And then in orange, these are motor proteins. They use ATP to change their shape, and they actually transport materials around cells. The sort of bubbly looking thing here, that's a vesicle. There will be materials inside that vesicle that need to be taken to different organelles inside the cells, and motor proteins walk along these microtubule roads to deliver the materials. So there's actually a fun little video clip that I'd like you to see that shows this happening. So these are onion seeds. So what they're going to do is make you think like a robot here. But they're going to get these onion seeds to grow, and they'll create an animation of like what's happening inside the cells. Some fascinating sound effects. So that's the radicle. That's the little embryonic root that comes out of the onion seed. Now let's sort of zoom in, and then the root hairs, they'll get inside and you can actually see motor proteins walking vesicles inside the cell. All right. So you can maybe start to see some of the crisscrossed fibers. In the background, that's the cellulose that forms the cell walls. But as it sort of pans back, you can start to see it. There you go. There are some of the protein roads. And then the little green things, those are the vesicles. Those are like the sacs carrying materials. In a moment, you'll see the motor protein. So there's the vesicle. Ah, there you go. And that's the little motor protein. And then the ribbon, that's the microtubule. So these little motor proteins walk along and they carry materials from one part of the cell to the next. So that's a fun thing that proteins can do. All right, let's pop back in here. Another function of proteins is to act as pumps and channels. So the bulk of your cell membrane is made of phospholipids. In this image, the phospholipids are like golden. And what they'll do is they help control what can enter and leave cells. Some stuff can pass between the phospholipids, but other stuff can't. So there are proteins embedded in the membrane that help regulate materials moving in and out of cells. So the different proteins that you see will be found in different combinations in different cells. But what they basically do is allow cells to take in what they need, get rid of what they don't need, get chemical messages from outside the cell. So like certain types of hormones can dock on these protein receptors and tell cells what to do. So pumps and channels are really important in terms of regulating cells, maintaining homeostasis, and telling cells what to do. So if we want to put it all together to try and sort of summarize things, lipids are the backbone of the membranes. They create the material that's, the envelope that separates what's inside the cell from what's outside the cell. Lipids can also act as energy storage molecules and as chemical messengers. But when you think of like individual cells, lipids make the membranes. Proteins, of course, are doing the work. They're the little motor proteins walking along the protein roads. They're the enzymes. They're the pumps and channels. Proteins are doing the work. How do you make the proteins? DNA and RNA. DNA provides the instructions. RNA does the assembly. And then carbs, we think of them as an energy molecule. Carbs provide the energy to do all that work. To power the chemical reactions, you need ATP. You produce ATP by breaking down carbohydrates, for the most part. So these molecules sort of work as a team, and when they all work together, you create these cells, and then cells are able to perform the actions we associate with life. Okay, what I'd ask that you do at this point is to draw a horizontal line across the base of your, or bottom of your notes, and then if you would, in 3 or 4 sentences, summarize what all of this is about. What's the big picture? I appreciate your time and your efforts. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back soon. Take care.